The film is looking at women in contemporary India, and what I do is I contrast two different camps. The Miss India beauty pageant versus a camp for young women who are training to become sort of Hindu fundamentalists. And it's looking at the future of the country and how women are being used to create two competing ideas of what India will be.
Looking at the documentary, it's nearly scary to see that there's so much parallel between these two subcultures. Mm-hmm. You have vanity versus guns, but in a sense it's vanity, just two different perspectives, beauty or having, you know, power. How did you experience that? Were you shocked, or was it as you thought?
Yeah, it was a really interesting process for me because what I realized was that, you know, on the surface these two worlds seem very different, you know, and the women in these two worlds seem very different. But what's really interesting is, you know, as I sort of got deeper into the research and spoke more and more to these women, I started to realize that they were more similar, you know, that there were more similarities between the worlds than differences, and that's kind of what was so compelling to me as a filmmaker.
Did you find that it's more about the environment that actually molds these girls as opposed to their own will or what they really want?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you know, that's Prachi, of course, is sort of the strongest example of that in the film, you know, where she comes from a family background that's conservative. She has a very domineering father, and this becomes her way of asserting her independence, you know, and finding her own voice and creating a certain kind of identity for herself is basically by becoming a militant herself, you know, and it's very much kind of shaped, her choices are very much shaped by the world and the family that she lives in, which is very similar to a lot of the girls in the beauty camp as well.
Going back and viewing these two subcultures of India, is it something that surprised you that this was the way it is and you know, the way it's going to be, or, you know, what did you take with you from having done the film?
What becomes really clear to you as a person and as a filmmaker, because when you're a filmmaker, when you're a documentary filmmaker, your job is always to sort of be on the outside, kind of looking in, you know, it's always to, it's always to sort of I guess assess things and sort of try to figure things out, to come at some kind of a truth, you know. And then you realize that in a country like India, where everything is so nuanced and so complex, that truth is so difficult to really kind of pinpoint and figure out, you know. So I came away, I think, in some ways with more questions than answers, you know, and certainly a desire to sort of explore more and to understand more. But both of the worlds were surprising to me. Both of, in terms of their complexity, you know, and the dualities that exist within them, and the fact that they're so grey, they're not black or white, either one of them. That's what was so fascinating.
But do you find it's very significant for that part of the world, for India, or do you also see the parallel in the Western world, regardless if it's a pageant in a fundamentalistic camp?
I think it's particularly fascinating in the context of India because of what India is going through right now, you know, sort of this burgeoning kind of economic powerhouse. So in that sense, it's very, very interesting because things are changing so rapidly there. So that that conflict and that tension is really sort of playing itself out because things are changing, you know. That said, you can certainly draw parallels between the situation in India and what's happening around the world. You know, we're seeing sort of a rise of fundamentalism all over the world, you know. One of the things that I was trying to sort of say with the film is how India, what's happening in India is in some way a reflection of what's happening in the world, so that India kind of holds up a mirror to, you know, to the world at large.
Did each camp, were they aware of the fact that you were actually doing parallel documentaries of both of them?
Yeah, no. To be honest, no. I mean, the fundamentalist camp certainly knew that I was filming with the Miss India pageant. They knew, the fundamentalists were fine with that, actually.
Oh, they were?
Yeah. The Miss India people, because I wasn't sure I was going to get access to the Durgavani camp. That took 2 years to kind of really to cement. It was unclear to me whether that would happen or not. So in terms of the pageant, they knew that I would be filming with the opposition, with forces that were opposed to the pageant. But I didn't tell them that I was going to be filming with the Durga Vaini.
And was there any revealment or anything when these two worlds actually met? I mean, everything from the judgmental factor or hate, did you realize anything when the two worlds met?
I'll tell you what's really interesting, actually. I mean, I wasn't surprised by the sort of anger or the hatred or the vitriol on either side, because when I talked to both sides, when I talked to the people in one world or the other world, they all were against each other. Prachi and her family found Miss India and the contestants kind of vacuous and not part of our Hindu culture, and they felt that it was degrading sort of the morals and values of India and Indian women. And of course the beauty contestants felt that these people were completely conservative and backward and trying to keep women, sort of disempower women. Interestingly, when I showed the film, because I showed the film a few months ago to Prachi and her family, and then also to Ruhi, separately of course, and they all really liked each other. So that was extraordinary to me. And Prachi's family, actually, they were all rooting for Ruhi to win. They all wanted her to win, which I thought was amazing.
I get goosebumps.
It's amazing. And so you feel in some sense that as soon as you turn the other into a human being, as soon as you're able to sort of break those barriers and actually allow people to see each other as people, amazing things are possible, So it gives me hope in some sense. Yeah.
Will you be doing an equivalent sequel to this? Or what's next in line?
For the next thing now, I'm starting to work on a series and then a feature-length documentary on fundamentalism around the world, just the rise of religious extremism around the world. So that for me is the next project.
I just have to spontaneously ask, do you feel any fear for doing, do you know what I mean with that?
Yep.
Of doing a documentary on something that's a very powerful force?
Yes and no, I mean, my producers do.
I can understand.
They're kind of terrified, but I don't really feel that yet. I mean, and I haven't really sort of delved into it, but I'm aware that I'm going to have to be cautious and careful, I fear a little bit in terms of this film when it starts to screen in India. It'll be interesting to see what happens when we start to show it there. So
the theme of this year of the Stockholm Film Festival is power, and of course power is very evident in your documentary. But what is power to you as both a filmmaker and a person?
That's a good question. For me, it's really about equality, I think. I don't really, I think of power, I mean, I think we're all kind of, it's part of the problem with the world, isn't it, right? That we all have this desire for ascendancy and control and power. I mean, that's been sort of, the defining kind of, sort of the defining theme in terms of our kind of collective narrative as people. So for me, I feel it's something that we have to understand. We have to understand that drive for power, and we have to somehow put it into context and to realize that it's actually kind of a base desire, and it can be very destructive, And for me, real power is equality for everyone.